Les, welcome.
Thank you.
Les Eck, you are on deck, and I thank you for coming and spending some time here with us today to talk about whatever it is that we talk about.
No worries. I'm here.
Well, you know, I thought I would give just a little bit of backstory because this is uniquely interesting for me and for us, particularly for both Brad and I, because, you know, he and I started at Zimmerman, he was 25 years and I was 24 years ago. And along the way, each one of us had the opportunity to work on your business a long time ago when we were, you know, a little younger and just getting started. And so at the time, you know, Rusty Eck Ford, which is now your dealership, was a big account for us to work on. And so for you to be here today is a really cool full circle because you're actually our first dealer client guest here, my first dealer client guest on the podcast. And I think it's a real cool full circle. So again, I thank you. Appreciate your
You're welcome.
participation in our business here. And again, thank you for being here.
No problem.
When I think about some good areas, you know, to start conversationally, we do share a couple of experiences, and that is that both of our dads, you know, we're first generation, if I understand correctly, car guys. And so we both grew up around the car business in different degrees. But my curiosity really stems from what was it like for you growing up in Kansas with your father being, you know, a big car dealer, and how did that affect your life as a young boy or guy?
Well, I would say, first of all, he didn't start out as a big car dealer. He started out in Haven, Kansas, a town of 1,000 people. And he came from the war, I think in 50 or 51. He got out of the Navy. Went to body shop school to learn how to weld and become a body man. And he was working in the body shop in Haven. And so he didn't even start out in sales. He started out in the back end. And there's a pool hall right next door. And it was there as I was growing up as well, and it seemed to be the local hangout for people that wanted to play pitch and snooker and pool and all that stuff. And I didn't know this until right at the very end when Dad was telling me or sharing with me. He said, because I asked him the same question, what made you get into it? And he said, well, it was an accident. He said, I was welding, and the owner asked me to come up and watch the showroom while he went next door to have lunch and play a little pitch. And so he did, and he had a customer come in, and the customer was trying to buy a station wagon, and the customer said, you know, I really like it. You know, can you take $50 off the sticker and sell it to me? Dad said, well, you know, I work in the body shop. I don't know. Let me go ask the owner. He's right next door. And so he went next door and asked the owner. And the owner looked at him and said, don't you understand? This is sales. Whatever it says on the sticker, the sticker's there for a reason. That's what you're going to pay. And go back and tell him that's it. So Dad went back and told him, said, you know, I'm sorry, I can't get you any discount. The owner said, that's why stickers are put there for us. That's the price. And so the guy said, well, can you take 25 off? And so he went back over again. The owner looked at him and said, you know, I guess you just don't listen. The sticker's there for a reason. That's what it's going to be. If he wants to buy the car, fine. Dad went back and said, man, I'm really sorry. I can't give you, and I'm not getting paid anything, so I can't give you anything I've got. He said, I can't even get you $25. And the guy said, I just want to win. I just want one win. Can you take $5 off the car? Dad said, oh, I think I can get that. Let me go over. So he goes over, he looks at the guy, and he says, this guy just wants a win. He just wants to feel like he got something. Can we take $5 off? And he said, the owner got mad. He said, son, I told you, because remember Dad was 21 or 2 at the time, 22 maybe. He said, I told you that's what stickers are for. If you can't handle going back and telling him that the sticker's what he's going to pay. If he wants to buy the car, I'll do it, but that's it. Don't ever come ask me again. End of story. And Dad looked at him and he goes, you know what? You just need to go sell ice cream cones for a nickel down the street because you don't have to discount those. But people buying cars, I get the feeling, are going to want to horse trade a little bit. And he goes, I don't do that. And Dad went back and told the customer, and the customer just, I never found out whether he bought or not, but
right.
Dad was so frustrated with the owner. And so about, I guess it was 120 days later, the owner come back and grabbed Dad out of the body shop and said, hey, remember that statement you made about I just need to go sell ice cream cones and get out of the car business? He goes, yep. He said, you know what? I think you're right. He said, people are wanting to negotiate more and more. And he said, I don't know if this is for me. And Dad said, well, I'll buy you out. He goes, well, you got any money? And he goes, not really. And so he, and I know I'm telling you the long story of how Dad got in.
Yeah,
but
that's good.
It just shows you how this whole transition. But so he said, well, I'll partner with you until you can get enough money. So he went and borrowed money from his mom and dad, and I found that check, and I still have that check framed in my office. It was
Really?
for like $1,000, and that's what he invested. And then I think he borrowed some from his brothers and sisters too later on, 100, 200, 500, just whatever he could.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's kind of a sort of what are those things called? Not hedge funds, but anyway, where people pool their money in funds. Anyway, his family kind of helped him pool their money, and he ended up going to Ford after about 6 months and saying, I want to buy this store completely. And then, of course, Ford Motor Company looked at him and said, how much experience you've got? And he says, well, I've been in sales about 6 months, and I worked in a body shop for about a year. And he goes, that's not enough for us to approve you. You need to go work 3 years and then come back.
Mm-hmm.
Show us what you can do. Dad waited 60 days, went back, said, hey, I'm ready to go. We've doubled sales. I need to get this thing done so I can close out with this guy. He said, son, you don't listen, do you? And Dad said, well, I've been told that before. He said, you need 2 or 3 years experience. So Dad waited 90 days this time and went back and said, okay, now we've tripled sales. I need to get this done. I need to be the dealer. Let's go. And the guy looked at him. He says, you're going to come back every 30 days, aren't you? And he goes, yep. And he said, okay, never mind. We'll put you in. And so they put him in as a dealer. And at the time, he was the youngest dealer that had ever become a dealer in the country. And so it was like, he was like 23 years old or something at that time. And so that's how he got in the business. And so as I was growing up, I never really thought about it. I just would do what most kids did back then. If you're a farmer, being a farm community, the kids went out and worked on the tractor and played in the fields, and all that, helped their dad. And that's kind of what I did. I would go down and sweep the floors and pick up stuff, take out trash, just kind of hang around, do whatever after school. And when I think it was about 7th grade, I said, well, is there something else I can do to start making some money? He says, yeah. He said, AJ's looking for a farmhand. And I said, well, okay. He said, I don't want to pay you. I'm like, okay. So I went out and worked on the farm at AJ Blockers for, I think, 2 years, cutting wheat. And don't say this too loud, but we'd drive wheat trucks and stuff back then in the 8th grade. That's what farm kids did.
Right.
And so basically, that's how I got my start. Dad, said, I want you to go out and appreciate working for someone else too. And so we did. We went out and worked on the farm with AJ, and that was a good experience. And It was a good experience. And then, when I got to high school, I was still working there, I think, the freshman year. And so I said, I'd really like to buy a car. And he said, okay, you got any money? I said, not really. He said, didn't you save any? I said, well, $5 a week is hard to. So I said, I'm going to buy a motorcycle. And he did not want me to buy a motorcycle. But so I ended up wanting to buy a motorcycle, and I went and bought a Honda 175. It was like $650. And I said, can I borrow $300? I got $300 down. Can I borrow the other $300 for 90 days? And I won't use the exact words, but he looked at me and said, do I look like a blank bank?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, no. He said, that's what banks are for. Go get yourself a loan. I'm like, who's going to loan me? I'm, 15, 16 years old. He said, go talk to him. So I did. I said, I got half down. I'll pay the other half in 90 days. And they gave me the loan. And
really,
I was scared. I was scared of that interest. I did not want to pay 4% interest, and so I paid it off in like 61 days or something. Everything went to that.
Right.
But you can do that when you live at home and you're a freshman. And of course, then after that, I told him, I said, I'd really like to start doing some more stuff around here. And so he started letting me kind of walk into it and clean. But, you're asking how I got into the business. This is kind of how I got into it. It's kind of like how Dad got into it. He just kind of worked his way in. It just kind of happened.
Mm-hmm.
And, he didn't come out of the Navy going, I'm going to be a car salesman. I'm going to be a car dealer. And I think when you look back at a lot of these first generation people, and Wichita has a lot of Pizza Huts franchisees, because Pizza Hut was born and originated by the Carney brothers in Wichita, Kansas.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, and the headquarters was there forever and ever until Pepsi moved it in like the mid-'90s. But, they worked for Pizza Hut, and so a lot of them just, as the Pizza Hut was growing, left Pizza Hut because they were already at Pizza Hut
mm-hmm.
to go out and buy franchises. I know several people that have done that. The same thing happened in the car business with the second generation folks, is the kids kind of grew up in the business. And so when that's all that's what your comfort level is.
Right.
And so, as I was going to high school, I went to a little 4-room school out in the country by Grandma my first 8 years. And then when I came to Haven, it's a town of 1,000 people. Believe it or not, that was
big.
It was bigger than the 9 people I had in my class in St. Joe. Great school, though. Wouldn't trade it for the world. But it was another transition. And so I was starting to work at the store after, just washing cars, again, sweeping floors and stuff. And
mm-hmm.
didn't make much, but I made a little. And I said, well, think I can get a car? And he goes, sure. What are you going to buy? I'm like, I don't know. I don't got any money. He said, well, better save some. Okay. And then the next year, a couple of my classmates, their sophomore year, got brand new cars from their dad. I'm like, okay, cool. I said, Dad, look at this. He said, good for them. They're spoiled. I said, maybe I shouldn't say that, but, he said, that's their business. If their dad wants to buy them a car, they can buy them a car. He said, you're going to buy your own. And so it wasn't until, I think when he left Valley Center, or when he was moving from Wichita to Valley Center in 1966, I believe, 67, that I was riding into Valley Center with him, and I seen an old black Fairlane sitting on the side that caught my eye, but it was wrecked. And he said, that was Kenny X, your cousin. It doesn't run, it's wrecked. He said, it's a $600 beater. And I said, well, can I buy that? He goes, you sure? I'm like, yeah, I'll buy it and fix it up. So that's what I did. And so you're asking he's rambling into these stories, but that's where I learned a lot of the trade because I started working on the engine. We rebuilt the engine.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't put any cams or anything. Everything had to go back factory. Dad would not let me hop it up, put headers, nothing on it. I rebuilt the engine. I sanded it, painted it myself, and I did everything on that car from pretty much start to finish. And that's how you learn. Not only you just learn more concepts and more how stuff works.
Right.
So you have an understanding. And so basically all this was doing was building the base and the background for which, Dad started in the body shop doing that stuff. And, I'm sure he rebuilt engines and stuff as well. Now I got to tell you, I didn't come out of high school or in high school going, I know how to build an engine, but, that's where you get lucky. When you're the boss's kid, you have people that,
help give you guidance.
They'll help me, yeah. They'll help. They come in, hey, help do this. Let me use this wrench. It'll make it easier on your knuckles. Little things like that. And so, it's you learn, like they say, you get raised by a family, not by a person. And that's kind of what it was. All the people that we had throughout the years, I can remember one, Ronnie Boyd. I was setting up new cars with him and, learned a lot from him. And, just a lot of different people, Dick Edwards, a lot of people that were also, I would say, mentors of mine over the years that I think the biggest thing they liked is, and I'm not bragging, is they said, you work. I'm like, what do you mean? He said, you don't just come and hide and collect the check. He said, you're actually working. And, I would make a deal with them, and they'd say, I need you to have all these done by the end of the day. And I said, well, what if I get them done by 2? Can I leave? Well, how do you do that? I said, well, I'll come early and I'll leave early. Oh, okay, well, sure. So, it was just little things like that you learn to negotiate with them. And, I wanted to go to the lake at 2 because it was hot in the summer. I didn't want to work,
Right.
And so that's how I kind of got into the business. And, Dad had asked me, he said, I want you to do 3 things that I didn't, that I just want you to make sure you follow these 3 things as you grow up. And if you want to get in the business, fine, but I need you to get a college education because I wasn't able to get that. I want you to go to ROTC so you can come out an officer instead of, like I did. And then he talked about, waiting to get married. And so when I graduated from Wichita State University, I looked at him and I said, okay, well, I've done what you've asked. What's next? He said, well, I guess you need to get a frickin' job. I said, okay. So I went out looking for a job. And about 4 days later, he called and said, what are you doing? I said, looking for a job. He said, are you going to come apply? And I said, well, didn't think you wanted me to. You said, go look for a job. You didn't say come and apply. So I came and applied, and that's how I got into business. And I don't know if I got you off track or on track.
No.
But that's my whole life story right there, kind of in a 10-minute nutshell or 5-minute nutshell. And so, I went into the office, and I had no clue where he was going to put me, or went in his office. And where do you think he put me in the store?
Detail.
That'd be a good guess, because that's what I did when I was going to college. I had odd and ends jobs when I was going to college. I detailed, cleaned new cars, detailed used cars. I was also a service advisor, used car recon guy, stuff like that. Put me in the office. Put me in the office with 11 girls and one guy. Randy had a college degree and paid me $600 a month. And did that ever cause problems? Because the girls were making $600 to $650.
Oh.
And they were mad. Boss's boy got a favor. I didn't complain either way. It was $600, and I had just gotten married. I could stay with that and live with that, so that's what I lived on. And it was a little difficult working with them because you'd ask them a question, they'd say, "Well, you're college, you should know."
Mm-hmm.
And I would challenge the questions. I'd say, well, you just need to add this column, this column, and this column, and this column, and this column need to equal this column, and if this column and this column don't equal that column, you got a problem. You transposed, or you fat-fingered something, or you did something. I'm like, okay, that's fine, but where does this column go after here? Well, that's not your problem. You just need to make sure the columns add up, put the tickets in. And I'm like,
yeah, I need to know more than that.
I need to know more. Right?
Right.
That's a robot. And so I would start asking more questions, and that's when I kind of started becoming not friends with Susie, but she started accepting me as, hey, this kid wants to learn. And oddly enough, I didn't earn her trust until I finally they questioned whether I was going to be as fast and as quick as the females.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, what can I do? And they said, well, how are you on a 10 key? And I'm like, I don't know. I guess okay. Well, can you add those columns without looking? I'm like, well, I've been doing it. And so they challenged me to a 10 key race and accuracy. And it wasn't until I beat the office manager that they go, well, I guess he does not make mistakes. Anyway, so all these things are just the way you shape yourself and you grow. And it's sad today because I don't know if they get the kids today grow up. I'm going to tell you smarter. They just are, because they got so many computers, so many tools, and the first thing we say is we want things better for our kids. And I think in a way that's a disservice to them, because we make it cushier for them instead of making them work on the farm, mm-hmm. or making them work in the office, and a lot of them, when they say go work on the farm, go in the office, like, well, I ain't doing that. I got a college degree. I'm not going to go back there. And so I think it's a changing world, but I do think that the kids that are growing up today are smarter than us. They've got computers. They've got more learning tools. They got more ways. I mean, who in this room remembers a Britannica encyclopedia? Yeah.
You and I do, yeah.
There you go.
Right.
And that's where we went. Now it's just,
everything's at the fingertips.
Correct. But, and the same with Dad. So that's kind of how I got in the business. That's kind of a little bit of how Dad got in the business. And, Dad was very fortunate to have his family help him. I was very fortunate to have my father in the business, and for him to, and my mom, because my mom was working in the office. She would fix dinner, and then she would go back to the office at night and do the books and stuff. And so she was she was the frugal, money watch, kept Dad out of trouble person. Mm-hmm. Dad was just, like he said, I'm just an old horse trader that knows how to talk to people. And that was it he was good at. And again, we were in a town of 1,000 people. So he was, everybody's raving about, well, we delivered to your door today. I got news for you. In 1953, we delivered every car to the door.
Right.
Not just some. I mean, literally, in 1953, if you wanted to sell a farmer, you had to go to the door. You had to go knock on their door. You had to take the vehicle out to their, I watched it. And nobody comes to Haven, Kansas to buy a car. We didn't have mass media. We didn't have all the stuff that we've got here now. We didn't have the internet. You couldn't afford newspaper ads. I mean, how do you do business in a rural community unless it is
face to face,
word of mouth, face to face? This guy took care of me, and Dad would have, as he expanded, he would hire a salesperson in Prairie Prairie, one in Bueller, and these small towns around him that had contacts. So networking in 1953, and it was it was all in-home delivery. I mean, sure, they might have come in, but back then financing and stuff wasn't, you didn't have much financing. It was, if the farmer had cash, he paid for it. If he didn't, he didn't. But there was some financing, I don't say that, but most of the stuff was wrapped up in big farm loans and stuff like that. That's my assumption. The Fireballs owned the bank downtown in Haven for years, but he just, it's kind of funny how they say the stuff recycles, the old is new again. So home delivery is something that we've done for 67 years, but it's now becoming fashionable by these big internet companies.
It's so interesting, if I might jump in there, because there's so much good stuff in what you've just shared. First from when I think about first generation automobile dealers in our country, you're really talking about entrepreneurial pioneers, right? I mean, men and or women who just really, they took a big chance on something years ago.
Yes.
And, in a lot of cases, the whole family supported it, and they worked around the clock to make this happen, right? And I have such a tremendous amount of respect and appreciation for all that have done that, right? Because it really is, it's like the culmination or the beginning of the American dream for so many people.
Well, I've said many times, the people that came out after the wars, 1 and 2, those were the backbone that I feel really got America, that built America into what it is. Because like you said, they're first generations, dad's that era. There's a lot of folks that I know, Grant Davis, a lot of others that were in the car business, the Schofields, that started in that era. And it just, you're right, they risked everything to go into it. And, the old nothing ventured, nothing gained. And I think that, again, that's where you want your second generation or your third generation to be better than you did. So you try to take that risk away from them so that they can succeed better. And I think in actuality, it hurts you. It gives you a cushion to fall back on that these guys didn't. And that cushion, the fact that they didn't have it, made them work, eat, breathe, sleep. And, like in my case, I knew I had a little bit of a cushion, but I still felt that same anxiety that I had about interest, especially in 1980. I had been a dealer for 5 years, and interest rates were 20%. Prime rate was 20, 21. I was choking a chicken back then. I mean, it was not good. So, I totally agree with you. I respect everybody that's been a first, and there's a lot of second generations that, the Van Tiles, Larry, took what Cecil had and blew it up.
There are a lot of second generations that have done very well, but there's also sort of a little bit of a stigma about some of the second generation because, as you mentioned, that desire of first generation to work hard and build something for the family that helped make life a little bit easier or a little bit better. And unfortunately, in a lot of cases, or some, that second generation, instead of having that same drive and that same work ethic, which you was so strongly instilled in you, not all have that, and some end up having that sense of entitlement.
I think that for the most part, though, your second generation, are all they experience their family, especially if they were pioneers, and I think those are all pretty good, hardworking people. At least the ones that I know are. I don't know many entitled ones. They all seem to be good hard workers because they watched and experienced it. Other industries, I'm not so sure. I think the car industry, they realize it, you got to go. I'm sure if everybody's listening and they own Pizza Huts or Taco Bells or, some restaurant, they're going to go, boy, you don't know what it's like until you try to hire a restaurant worker. I get it. Any industry you're in, manufacturing, whatever, Wichita's a big manufacturing town, it's difficult to go from first generation to second generation to third generation. And some people make it and some people don't. Some people decide that they don't want to be in that business and they go do something else and they become more successful. And I applaud that.
Yeah.
Some people, I don't want to do what they do. I want to be a doctor. I want to help people. Some people go into real estate. But, it's just each individual's different, and we all grow up different. But that's how I got into the business, and The only last story I'll tell is that people ask how I became a dealer then finally, because I'm working in the office, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm sitting there working away in the office, and I'm about a year in of working there. And so I went there in like May or June after I graduated from college. I was there a year and a month. And a couple of guys come in and said, "Hey, can we talk to you?" Pete Egbert and Dick Smith. And I said, "Okay, what do we need?" He said, "Well, Rusty told us to come get you and sit down and talk with you." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." So I went back in and sat down, and he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, working in the office." He said, "How would you like to run a Ford store?" And I'm like, I don't know, where at? And they said, "Leavenworth." I'm like, "Well, where the heck is that?" And they said, "Well, it's up right outside of Kansas City." And I said, "Well, I've been married a year. Let me go home, and we're expecting the first child. Let me talk it over, and let me go out and look at the place." We made the mistake of driving in over the Missouri River and coming in from I-29, the western area, coming in over the Missouri River where Fort Leavenworth's at. And my first call was to Dad saying, "Are you sure this is the place? This town's old, and it's nothing new in it. It looks pretty run down." He goes, "That's it." He said, "But it's out south." We went out south where the new part was growing, and of course that's where the Ford store was. The other stores were all still downtown, the Chevy, the Dodge, and all that. What I later learned is that Leavenworth is the oldest city in the state of Kansas. It's where some of the trails went through, the Pony Express and all that, and that's why the Fort Leavenworth was built there right on the river. So I went back and talked to Dad, and he goes, "You want the job? Take the job. I got no problem." I'm like, okay. So people assume that Dad got me in the business.
Right.
He did indirectly, because I stayed working with him and around him. But it's kind of like the same thing I've done with my kids. I never thought that they were ready, So you don't never think your kids are ready.
Mm-hmm.
And Dad never thought I was ready. Someone from the outside did, though. So they grabbed me. You ready for this? They doubled my pay to $1,200 a month.
There you go.
Big increase.
Yeah.
So picked everybody up, moved, said, "You got to be there in 30 days. And I'm like, okay. So sorry, around the 1st of July, I went up there, and Harold Fader made me the dealer. And he also did a fantastic thing, which was made him put a clause in there that I had the opportunity to buy 51% in 5 years. And that was a lifesaver. Again, someone looking out for me, because I didn't know any better.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how I became a dealer. Little did I know until I met Henry Ford II in Las Vegas at a new car showing in
The Deuce.
Yes, in 1980. He was at the showing, and he was about 3 rows in front of me in the Aladdin Hotel. And I thought, I'm just going to say hi to him. And so I waited till he got up and went out, and he was in the lobby, and he had his, 3
Entourage.
whatever. And yeah, I don't know what you call him back then. And I went up and said hi to him, and he goes, "Oh yeah, you're Rusty's boy." I'm like, "How the hell did he know me?" He goes, Yeah. He said, "You're the youngest dealer in the country." He said, "You beat him by a month and how many days?"
No kidding.
And I said, "Didn't know that." He goes, "Yeah, yep." He said, "You're also the largest dual dealer in the country." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, you're a Ford, Lincoln, and Mercury. We don't have any of those very often." And anyway, so, I was impressed by the fact that he knew who we were, he knew who Dad was, and that told me that Ford was a family company and really did look at people as their family.
That's the kind of thing that really makes you feel part of something.
Right. And, I was always pretty shy about going up and talking to people, but I think that was the one time when I kind of broke out of it and said, hey, they don't bite. They're just people. And so, that's when I started becoming more entwined and meeting the people at Ford and so on and so forth. But I don't know. I've rambled on here way too much.
That's
but
all right.
All about me. And, you ask a question that really opens things up to a lot of experiences that I've had and how you get into it. And, I've now got third generation that's coming into the business. They've been in it for a while now. And just like Dad, I'm sure I never felt they were quite ready because their work ethic is different than my work ethic. It's smarter, not necessarily longer hours.
Right.
To me, I just worked bell to bell.
Put the time in.
Back then in Leavenworth, it was 7 days a week, and we were bell to bell. And that's what I did. Now, in hindsight, I was trying to make a better world for the kids, but was it better monetarily? Yes. Was it better as far as me being with them? I don't know. I don't know, because they're good kids. They would come to work with me as well, and I had one son that would negotiate with the salesman for candy bars, and I thought that was pretty humorous. He'd pit one against the other, and so you learn a lot from your family. It's just like whether you're a farmer or a franchisee for food or a real estate person. A lot of realtors, their family grows up. Huygan's 100 years old in Wichita, and their dad started, and then Junior, and it'll probably keep passing on. Donlinger Construction. I applaud people like that in Wichita that are in their fourth generation. 100+ years. That is how you do that. Star Lumber Company, same thing in our town. Fourth generation, fifth generation company. I don't know how you train. I mean, because
it's tough.
You got to have one person that's at the top, and every time, Dad was, he had 11 kids in his family. His was easy, They went different directions, and but now when Dad had kids, he only had 4, and so again, I was lucky because the other 3 were not as interested in the car business, or at that time, two girls, 1 boy. Just it wasn't as whatever appealing to people to get into the car business, I guess.
A couple questions on that. It's funny when you talk about how your dad kind of kept you at arm's length. Didn't feel that you were ready and made you work through different things and work through other people, which my dad did too. And I remember, particularly at a certain time in my life where I wanted to work with my dad. I really did. Like, it was a big desire of mine, and he kept me at a distance because he didn't feel that I was ready. And ultimately, I earned that opportunity. And now I think years later, where we with this business have been able to carry on, what my dad started in the car business, different pathway. And for many years, I thought, that my number one desire with this was to create a legacy family business, right? Something that would go on from generation to generation. And as I've gotten a little older, and my kids, I have young children, so it's going to be a long time until they even get to the, to the point. But I realized that it's not up to me at this point to decide what they may or may not want to do with their lives. So to create for me this, something that I, feel that needs to be passed on, I don't know that that's the thing. So my question to you is, how do you view that legacy within your family? Now, you being second generation and third coming up, and at some point in time it passes on, or how do you feel about that?
Well, you asked that question, and it's odd that you mentioned that, because in 2001, the city came through with the freeway and condemned our building and decided to take it under condemnation, which means, here's your check, get out.
Really?
Yeah, it was not pretty. And when we were building the building, the city kept saying, you're building too much, you're building too much. And Dad kept saying, I want to build it like the old one. Because we had a tornado, we've had fires, we've had so many things come through this building, and it's built with brick and rock and steel, and that's why I want the new one. I don't want tin building.
Mm-hmm.
And so we built a concrete structure, and he said, I want to build it for another 50 years so that the next generation and the next generation can carry on. That's a heavy load. That's a heavy load. So, every person gets approached with selling their stores or buying their stores, and we're no exception. And there's times that you get into spaces that you go, maybe they don't want it, maybe it's a hassle. And what I learned was I didn't ask. I was making my own assumptions.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to ask, what is it you want to do? And you can ask them at one point in their stage, and it might be, I don't know yet. And then 5 years later, they get clarity, or they get a family. I've got a young kid now that, went to college and got a degree, $140,000 in debt, and went to work for Pizza Hut. He was a manager making $2,500 an hour, getting ready to have his first kid. And he walked in. He said, I'm scared. And he was a childhood friend of Zach. And so we knew him from coming over to the house.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, what is it you want to do? He said, I need to make some money. I'm scared with this child coming. I can afford it. I got a student debt. My wife's got student debt. And he said, it's choking us. And $2,500 working 90 hours a week. And I said, well, you want to sell cars? I have no clue how to do it. So we hired him. And, he was an okay guy, average salesman. But after 90 to 120 days, he became smarter than us. And, I think that relationship I had with him, I was able to keep him on track. But point being is that I had probably a lot more time and patience with him sometimes than you do with your own kids. And that's the same thing I seen with Dad. When I'd walk into his office, he'd say, what do you do? I'm busy. I'd see other people walk in there, and he'd sit down and talk to them. And I found myself doing the same thing with my kids. What are you doing? I'm busy. But I think it boiled down to you're more uncomfortable, or at least in our family, we were never touchy-feely.
Mm-hmm.
You become more uncomfortable talking with your kids about business. Plus, they don't want to hear they're screwing up, they're messing. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Whereas you can do that with another individual. So it's almost good to have someone else mentor your kids versus yourself sometimes. But that gentleman has now grown and blossomed and is doing a fantastic job for us running a store. And, took 10 years to get there. But he was patient, and he learned, and he listened. And that's something that a lot of people in today's world, again, don't want to do. They want to get there fast.
So fast.
They want to get there fast.
It's interesting you say, I think, my dad and I partnered coming up on 15 years ago to purchase another, agency here in Fort Lauderdale, and we started this company together. And so my dream of he and I working together came true. But it was also, it was a double-edged sword because, when, as a young guy getting my hands into running my own business for the first time, and he was very hands-off, in fact, almost entirely, but there was still, he, rightly so, had that sense of responsibility to be a mentor and to be a leader and to guide me. And I wasn't always ready to hear what he had to say, or I thought that I knew it. And whether I thought I knew better or not, I just knew this is the way that I feel that I need to proceed to run this business. And there was a lot of challenges there. It's only now years later. My dad passed, 6-7 years ago. I should know the specific date, but I can't recall it right now. But it's only now that I've grown a little older that I can look back and those words and that wisdom resonates with me a lot more now than it did then, because it's that father-son, push.
And that's what I've told my kids. I said, I'm in your eyes bitching at you now, but 10, 15, 20 years from now, you will go, oh, now I get it.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, that's the problem, is how to get people to listen to what you're saying. And, I always said that I learned a lot from Dad, pretty much everything. I learned the good and the bad. I learned what to do and what not to do. The things that get you in trouble, that sour relationships, so on and so forth. I could go into the whole story, but there's way more than everybody needs to know about us. But, I took a hiatus out of the business for about 10 years, and from 86 to 97.
Mm-hmm.
So, it was getting too much, and working with Dad was we had some plans. The plans didn't come to fruition, and I could tell that he wasn't ready to step aside or, partner up or any of those kind of things. And that's what I've seen about the first generation, is they built this from scratch, and it's their baby, and they don't want to let go. I know a couple of folks now that are in their 80s, and they still go to work every day.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I remember Charlie Gabus in Des Moines. I think he worked till the day he died. I don't know. I know Dad did. And Cecil Van Tile, same way. Although Cecil, and Larry had their own separate thing, but
Cecil was well into his late 80s, early 90s, if I remember correctly, and was still going.
Yeah, I mean, I remember going and talking to Cecil when he was in his 80s, and he was still in his office working away. So, whether it's Pizza Huts, real estate, whatever, the people that built that first generation, they don't want to leave all their self-worth, not all their self-worth, but a lot of their self-worth, a lot of their being has been creating their baby. And you don't want to let it go. And I get that totally. I think where the second generation becomes a little bit different is that I get to this point in life and I go, I don't want to let go either, but I watched him die not letting it go. So I have to let it go at some point in time and just trust that they're going to not fall. If they do, then you'd make the decision then. You don't try to guess the decision before you make it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, again, all the respect in the world, because I would not have this opportunity in life to succeed if it hadn't been for all the first generation hardworking that people built the car business and built the entrepreneurships that are out there. And it's just, it's what I knew growing up. I can't say I really grew up saying I wanted to work with Dad, because like I said, when I go in and ask questions, what do you need? I'm in a hurry, I'm busy. I never got, when I went to Leavenworth, and I'd call him and ask him questions, I'm out of cash. He said, don't look to me, you went to college. I'm like, okay, so, what do I do? And he said, I don't know. So I always just go get with my CFO or whatever.
Right.
So I called a guy from Ford Credit that used to be with Dealer Development, Cliff Harkness, and he came in and spent a week and educated me on the financial sheets, the balance sheets, and all that better. I mean, I'd taken accounting and all that stuff in college, but he did it based on what my books were. And from that point on, I was like tight. I became Ford Credit, Dealer Development tight, and knowing how to do it and what to do. But he was never, when I'd go to Valley Center, and I remember this, I'd work nights after school, and I'd work Saturday about 3:30, 4. I'd go home, and I'd walk in, and I'd say, well, getting ready to go home. He goes, well, have a good weekend. I said, oh, okay. I said, because I didn't have a paycheck. He'd just give me a little cash each week. I said, can I get some spending money? And he'd flip by the hundreds and the 50s and the 20s and the 10, and then he'd get to the 5, and he'd say, here you go, don't spend it all in one place. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, thank you. And so I'd go and I'd take that $5 and I'd put it in an envelope in my glove box. And I think he knew that, since I filled every used car with gas, that I was probably getting a gallon or two. Back then, a gallon of gas was 19-20 cents.
Yeah,
so,
right.
I mean, it was still a lot relative, but it didn't take much because we didn't go many places. I mean, I could get from Hutch to home in a gallon and back, for 19 cents. So, I would borrow some gas now and then. Same thing the farm boys did,
Right.
They got the gas tank after they fill the car up. But mostly I rode with their friends that had new cars. That's what I did. I just rode with them. But anyway, so again, that was a good lesson that he taught me.
Mm-hmm.
To be tight, to be frugal, don't overpay your kids, and so all these things, these stories that I'm telling you, are just lessons that you learn and how I grew up. Kind of relate. I don't know. Listeners will tell you whether it's relative or not, or whether I'm just rambling, but of how I got up and grew in the car business. And I think, in hindsight now, I mean, it's 45 years later. I was very fortunate to have the experience and the way I grew up at the 4-room schoolhouse, working on the farm, and the way that I had to grow in the car business was probably, was what they chose for me, and it worked. And, a good businessman always puts more pressure on himself than anybody else. And,
Mm-hmm.
That's what I felt I've done. And I don't know. I better quit talking.
There's so many, really solid foundational values there,
Mm-hmm.
right? That, and I think it's probably easier for us. I think, we're not of the same generation, but we're certainly of an older generation that is one that's coming up now. And it's always easy to say the younger generation, maybe they're not learning these same values. And I don't think that they are. And so in listening to your story, there's these core fundamental, I'm a Northeasterner, but these Midwestern values, right? About work and respect and honor, and at least from my perspective, right? And foundationally, those are really important values to anybody growing up.
Yeah, I think that, to say my values are better than someone else's is wrong, because they're not. But, different parts of the area, different parts of the country.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I remember when I heard the word bubbler, what's that? That's a water fountain, or what this girl called a water fountain in Minnesota. And, everybody's got different accents and different cultures. But in the long and short of it, whether it's the first generation, second generation, third generation, if you're going to be successful, you've got to have the drive and the will and the passion. And whichever way you choose, it doesn't mean it's the wrong or the right way.
Mm-hmm.
It's just your way.
Right.
And so I can't say the third and fourth generations that are coming up behind us are going the wrong way. It just wasn't the way I went. And that's what Dad kept telling me. Well, it's not the way I did it. Got it. I'm trying to take what I learned from you and go better and make it better.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I'm sure that's what my kids and their kids are going to do, because they're on the computers learning smarter skills, quicker skills. They're going to say, okay, that was your way, but I'm going to learn from you and make it bigger and better and, make it my way. So I think that's the thing that I have to think of and learn, is that I didn't do it Dad's way. I did it partly his, partly mine, partly Mom's, partly Dick Edwards, partly, everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And I made it my way. And now the third generation is doing it their way based on my input, what I'm saying. It's kind of like someone once told me, they said, look at a kaleidoscope. Looks like one beautiful picture, but it's a bunch of glass pieces that come together. And that's kind of what you do when you grow in a business. It's just a bunch of pieces that all come together and become your way.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's a beautiful analogy.
Yeah, that's my thoughts.
I am, I guess, not final question, because you never know when these conversations going to end, but I know that giving back to the community is important to you. And I'm curious just to get a little sense of what that means to you.
Well, again, coming from the small towns everybody helped everybody. You know, when it was farming season and one farmer got done, he took his combine over and helped the other farmer finish up, or plowing or this and that. So everybody was helping everybody. It was a community kind of thing. And I feel that it's the people out there that are affording me the opportunity. Without them as customers, without them using us as their business partner, we wouldn't have the funds to do anything with.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not really my funds, it's the community's funds, it's everybody's funds, because they can choose where to put that money. They don't have to put it in the Ford dealership or our dealership's pockets for a product. They can choose anything and everything. So my goal is not to take the money and hold on to it. My goal is to keep that money circulating. And, you know, if you can use it for some good along the way. Now, charities are good, but, you know, when you're spending your money local at other shops and furniture and hardware and whatever, you're circulating that money. That's good too, because now you're saying to them, I trust you with my money. I want to do business with you.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're keeping that money flowing, and, you know, that money flowing is what, you know, 4 and 5 times fold, it grows. But when it comes to the charity, you know, it's, you just feel fortunate. When you're younger, you just go. As you get older, you start to go, you know what? If it hadn't been for the public and the people entrusting in us, I wouldn't have any of it. So it's not mine to save. It's mine to share. And so that's what you do. You end up sharing it with people, and you never know what's going to hit your heart or hit your soul. I mean, I was at a charity auction once, and I don't want to brag about this story, but this was one of the stories that probably may, you know, I don't hate Christmas, but I hate receiving gifts. I love giving versus, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people are that way at Christmas, but this was at a charity event, and they were holding a live auction, and this one lady that had retired, they gave her like a Xbox or something to retire. I'm thinking, okay, after 30 some years you get an Xbox. And then later on there was a live auction, and she was bidding on something, and you know, she thought she was going to get it, and it was going once, going twice, and then someone else bid and took it out, and I just watched her face go. And I'm thinking, why didn't someone she just spent her whole 30 years here. Why would someone take her out on an item that she wanted to buy as memorabilia? I think it was a basketball or something from one of the universities that she graduated from. And then I looked over at the person, and I seen the big ring and the fur coat, and, you know, I'm not picking on females, but
right.
They're like, yay, I got it. And it was like going once, going twice, and she bid again. But she's like talking to her friends, and I know I could tell she just doesn't have the money. And then the other lady bid, going once, going twice, and I thought, come on, lady, bid. And she wouldn't bid. And so right before he said sold, I said, put my hand up. He goes, oh, we got a new bidder. Boom. And I just leaned over my wife. I said, she is not going to get that item, period. She goes, what are you doing? That's stupid. I said, no, it's not. I said, watch. And so we bid it 4 or 5 more times, and it brought stupid money. And she finally is like, okay, you know, husband's going, that's it, that's, you know. So I ended up buying it. And they go, sold. So I go up, I grabbed it. I took it right back to the lady, and I put it in her hands. And I said, this is for you. And it still brings back emotion to me even today, because I like that spontaneous thought of, I don't know, it just, I shouldn't say this, pissed me off that someone took her out after she was showing excitement of getting it, and knowing that she had given, she ran this this charity that we were doing that for years and years, and it just caught me wrong. That's the kind of charity that's spontaneous, that I love, that, you know, and I can go on and on about that. And I don't want to brag, because there are so many people out there that are so well on charity. They give, the philanthropists in this country are second to none, and I am just a small piece of that. And could I do more? Probably. But it just seems like it just has to tug on that heartstring the right way, and when it does, it does, and you give whether you've got it or not.
It feels good. I think we could all agree. It feels good to help somebody out in some way that's selfless, and particularly if if like we are to varying degrees fortunate enough to be able to succeed in our own ways. It's meaningful.
Yeah, it's like I said, the good Lord put us on this earth to share, and again, if it wasn't for them sharing with me to begin with, I wouldn't be fortunate enough to be able to share back. And I need to quit talking, because the other thing, as you get older, you got so damn many stories you can tell. and the younger folks are like, when's he going to shut up?
No, I think that there's so much in what you're saying, there really is, and it's enjoyable to sit here and share this moment with you and hear what you have to say.
Cut it short and let you finish with the final words, and then come back some other day, and you can continue on and go for the next 20 years.
I think that would be great.
Anything else?
Les, no, I think,
answers?
Well, I mean, there's an enormous amount of questions that you and I feel that we could have this conversation for a long, long, long time.
You found it. Once I get to talking, I can talk. Unfortunately,
Les, I appreciate you. I thank you for taking this time. I thank you for helping support our business, and appreciate that partnership with you and your organization. And I thank you for sharing your story with me and our potential viewers and listeners here. It means a lot.
I thank you for listening to my stuff, because it's a lot. And anybody else that's listening to this, thank you for listening to all the stuff that I put out there. And if it means anything, fine. If it's not, throw it in the trash can. Move on.
Means a lot. Les Eck.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Greatly appreciate it. Great job. Okay. Bye-bye.